Hello everybody, Jeremy Dickinson here. Thank you all for watching. So in this video, what I want to do is lay the conceptual foundations for understanding Harry Frankfurt's 1969 essay, Alternate Possibilities and Moral Responsibility. So what I'm going to do is discuss two main concepts. Yes, the concepts that we find featured in the very title of Frankfurt's essay. So the concept of alternate possibilities and the concept of moral responsibility. So what I'll do is discuss those concepts in turn and make sure that we are clear enough on them to move forward to understand the key moves that Frankfurt's going to make in his essay. Now, after discussing the concepts in this video, which will be part one of a video series on Frankfurt's 1969 essay, what I'll do is lay out a principle that Frankfurt is concerned with dominantly in his 1969 essay, and that principle connects alternate possibilities with moral responsibility, as we're going to see. And then after laying out that principle, what I'll do is discuss, just in very, very broad terms, what Frankfurt's going to do and what he's going to say in response to that principle. And then in part two of my video series on this classic essay, what I'll do is I'll discuss the key moves that Frankfurt makes in trying to respond to the principle. So we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. The first thing that we need to do is understand the concepts that feature in the title of Frankfurt's essay, because those concepts play an absolutely central role in the overall argument that he ends up running in his 69 essay. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the concepts. So there's alternate possibilities on the one hand, moral responsibility on the other. Let's begin with alternate possibilities. So alternate possibilities might seem a bit fuzzy to you. It's not a term that we use regularly when we're conversing about our actions, but it is a notion that's related to our actions. And I think one that can be illuminated just by thinking about an ordinary case. So let me be the agent. In my case, you can be the agent in your case, and you can come up with your own if you like, but I'll just use me as an example, and you can just make the appropriate changes for you to try to illuminate this idea of alternate possibilities. So today, for example, I'm an agent, I'm a person who can perform actions, I can make changes in the world. Cool power to have. And what I did today, what I chose today was to come in here, my office, and at home and create a YouTube video. Now, I could have done other things instead. I could have gone for a walk. I could have stayed out in the living room and watched some news. There are a range of other things that I could have done. Of course, my options are limited right now due to COVID-19 pandemic, but still, there appear to be options open to me, viable options, physically possible options open to me. And so I think we can understand the notion of alternate possibilities in terms of the notion that we understand better, the notion of options. So one has alternate possibilities when one has options open to them. One has viable, physically possible options open to them. So presumably it was physically possible that I stayed out in the living room and watched the news. It was physically possible for me to have gone for a walk. Of course, I came in here and I decided to make a video. So that was the option that I had that I chose. So you might think, just very simply, right, that when I went to choose an action, I had at least three options open to me. There could have been others, but let's just simplify here. Produce a YouTube video, watch the news, go for a walk. Those three options were open to me. They were all equally open to me, as it were. But I ended up choosing to create a YouTube video. That's the option that I chose. So alternate possibilities can be understood in terms of having these other two options open to me, despite the fact that I chose the one involving creating a YouTube video. So this is obviously logical space over here that I'm using to draw a kind of garden of forking paths idea, this notion that we get from the author Borges and that other philosophers like John Martin Fisher have used to help us understand the notion of acting freely. So think about a timeline. You're going to act and there's multiple options open to you. So there's a forking paths model that can maybe help us understand the idea of alternate possibilities. So I chose one. I chose the option of creating a YouTube video, but there are other options that I could have chosen, alternate possibilities. Okay, so hopefully the notion of alternate possibilities is more illuminated for you now. But still, there's the concept of moral responsibility that I need to say some things about. in order for us to grasp the central concepts at play in Frankfurt's 69 essay. So there's the concept of moral responsibility. What is moral responsibility? Well, maybe the first thing to note is that moral responsibility is a kind of responsibility that's unique. So you might think that there's causal responsibility. So I might be causally responsible for picking up my coffee cup right now. Nice cup. So I'm causally responsible for picking it up, but I'm not morally responsible for having done so. I'm causally responsible because I caused the lifting of the coffee cup. But I'm not morally responsible for picking it up. Unless like you just really hate, right, the team that features on the cup. You might think there's something morally problematic with me. Okay, but I'll set that complication aside. Okay, but there's a kind of responsibility that involves being morally responsible. So, for example, if I were to tell a lie to a friend, or if I were to help someone who's in need, these are two ways in which I could be held responsible for my actions. So in the case where I lie to a friend, you're going to say that I'm blameworthy. So I'm responsible in a negative sense, right? You're going to, my friend in that case could hold me responsible in the sense that I'm blameworthy for how I treated him or her. In a case where I help someone who's in need, I'm going to be assessed in terms of responsibility positively. So I might be praised. Someone might pat me on the back. Someone might say, hey, good job. Someone might encourage me to continue doing what I'm doing. So all this is to say is that we do think that there's such a thing, at least ordinarily, as moral responsibility. And the concept of moral responsibility is going to contain, at least very generally, further subconcepts like blameworthiness and praiseworthiness, where the praiseworthiness is associated with positive responsibility of a moral kind, and the negative responsibility is going to be cashed out in terms of blameworthiness. Okay, so hopefully the idea of moral responsibility is making good sense here. So we have alternate possibilities on the one hand, the having of options other than the one that was in fact selected perhaps in a situation, and then we have moral responsibility, which is a responsibility of a moral kind, and examples involving lying and or helping the needy hopefully illustrate that there are kinds of responsibility that are of a moral kind as opposed to responsibilities of a non-moral kind. Paradigmatic case of causal responsibility, where I lift up a cup of coffee. The easy example, of course, but there are many that we could multiply. So I'll leave it to the viewer to run examples of his or her own to illustrate to themselves the idea of moral responsibility. So I think we have a good understanding, an intuitive understanding at the very least, of the key concepts at play in Frankfurt's essay. Now, many philosophers, Frankfurt argues, and correctly so, have claimed that there's a very, very tight connection between alternate possibilities on the one hand and moral responsibility on the other. And that connection is one of necessity. Some claim that there's a necessary connection between them in the following way. And I'll capture this in terms of a principle. So we'll call this, following Frankfurt and others, the principle of alternate possibilities. And the principle of alternate possibilities, put very generally, goes like this. An agent is morally responsible for performing a certain action only if that agent could have done otherwise. Only if, as it were, then, the agent had alternate possibilities open to him or her. Okay, so let me put it one more time so we're clear. The principle of alternate possibilities. An agent is morally responsible for an action only if, so there's a very, very strong claim that's being made here, only if she could have done otherwise. In other words, only if she had alternate possibilities open to her. Okay, so let's just see if we can understand the principle using an example. So I'll use my own example. You can use your own in your case. So suppose I lie to my friend about something, and my friend gets mad at me, and rightly so, initially because of the hurt that causes, the betrayal that causes, right? Not that I would do that, okay? Just so we're clear here, but it's just an example. And suppose that my friend knows me well, knows the situation well enough to know that I wasn't under any significant psychological duress in the moment that I told the lie, meaning there wasn't a gun put to my head telling me to lie to my friend. Okay, in that circumstance, maybe to stave off just embarrassment, I told the lie. Okay, my friend would be right to say, gosh, Jeremy, he could have avoided lying to me, but he lied to me anyways. And that makes him blameworthy for what he did. That makes him morally responsible for what he did. Likewise, if we find out that, if I went out and donated, a large package of green teas to the healthcare workers, so HCW, shout out, hashtag HCW shout out. If I were to do that, and the healthcare workers who I'm giving the supplies to, the teas to, if they were to be like, oh yeah, we can tell he was under no duress, no one forced him to do it, he didn't do it for any ulterior motives, etc., that would have determined him doing what he had done, then they would be like, gosh, he's to be commended for doing what he had done. Right? Just for example. Okay, there's obviously countless other examples that we could multiply here, but hopefully the point is clear. Just to illuminate the principle, it seems like ordinary every day that when we assess whether or not someone's morally responsible for something, we also assess whether or not they could have done otherwise. Right? And those examples are supposed to sort of confirm the principle. Does that make sense? The confirmation is found in each of the cases that I just gave, the case of blameworthiness of the lie, the case of praiseworthiness, donating the teas to the healthcare workers. In both cases, it's just stipulated that I could have done otherwise. And I did that in order to just capture the intuitiveness of the principle of alternate possibilities. But now you might think about it like this to help perhaps further confirm the principle, but by doing so in a different way. Suppose that I tell the lie in the situation, but suppose that when my friend gathers all the information from the situation, realizes that I was under incredible psychological duress for whatever reason. I was threatened at gunpoint. I don't know. You can make the case as severe as possible, and that's what led me to tell the lie. You might think, oh gosh, Jeremy told the lie in that situation, but he's not to be held responsible for it because he couldn't have done otherwise. Okay, and likewise, if I'm compulsive about meeting my own self-interest, and I want a tax write-off or something like that, so I give to charity, so I give the teas to the nurses in order to satisfy my compulsive self-interest, and so I couldn't have done otherwise. You might think, he's not to be praised for having given the teas to the healthcare workers. Right. So it seems like these cases also, in a way, do some confirmation work. When we see that an agent couldn't have done otherwise, we ease off of, we mitigate, we completely remove, in some cases, moral responsibility. So the principle of alternate possibilities. An agent is morally responsible for performing an action only if she could have done otherwise. In other words, only if she has alternate possibilities open to her. And what Frankfurt wants to claim is this: as intuitive as this sounds, right, to our ordinary listening ear, this principle is false. The principle of alternate possibilities is false. And here's what Frankfurt's strategy is. Very big picture is to argue the following. An agent can be morally responsible even if she couldn't have done otherwise. In other words, even if she didn't have alternate possibilities open to her. Once again, Frankfurt's general strategy. An agent can be morally responsible even if she couldn't have done otherwise, even if she didn't have alternate possibilities open to her. And if Frankfurt's right about this, then the principle of alternate possibilities fails, because the necessary condition that's specified in the principle fails. So I'll stop here now. This was part one of my video series on Frankfurt's 1969 essay, Alternate Possibilities and Moral Responsibility. In this video, I laid out the conceptual foundations for understanding the Frankfurt. If you have any questions, comment below. email me, jedickin@syr.edu. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.